Congratulations on the new record. It came out like a couple of weeks ago on the end of November, right?
Yeah, November 27th. Yeah.
And how has that process worked for you in the current environment? How has it been putting a record
It's
out of
been
that?
it's been great and difficult.
Right?
Um, it's one of those things where you say, no, why would I decide to invest this much money in a record at a time when I'm not working? And does this really make sense? But you wake up every day and there's something inside of you says, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So you just go with it.
Right. And obviously you aren't touring or anything like that or performing much. So are you getting any kind of feedback from fans and stuff, and other musicians about what they think of the record and
Oh,
how?
yeah. The response has been great.
Yeah.
The response to the record has been really, really great. I actually did one, it was last Thursday. I took over Ashford and Simpson's Sugar Bar open mic.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, because I was supposed to play Daryl's house,
Right.
but due to COVID and everything being crazy and numbers ticking up and having that many people on one stage without truly being able to social distance and not knowing the quarantine situations, and
Yeah.
also just it just didn't make sense, so we had to postpone it. So I called Valerie, and I know they've been doing this virtual open mic, and that was like one of my home away from homes when I first started here, and so I took over the open mic, and I performed like pretty much every song on the record except for "Shadow of Your Smile." So I
Uh-huh.
performed pretty much the whole record. I had guest artists. All the guest artists were attached to the record, like my amazing singers who helped sing background, and my
Right.
producer who just did a piano Christmas album. And so it was just a night of celebrating the album and those that were attached to it. And Shoshana Bean came in and she did a song and promoted her show for this Saturday at her Apollo live stream. And so it was just a great night. And but I put the show together because I just asked Valerie, could I take it over? She was like, whatever you need.
Yep.
But then she surprised me. She and my management surprised me. I didn't know they had sent the record to Jan Gay, Marvin's ex-wife.
Right.
She came onto the Zoom and she was just gushing and gave me like her full blessing
Oh,
and
man.
was like, I think calling it Imagining Marvin is like a stroke of genius. And like she really gave me like full blessing. And so I'm excited. She said she wants to keep in contact and maybe there's some opportunities that may come up soon. So I'm just holding my breath
Yeah.
and waiting to see. But it's just been really great, man.
That's pretty exciting. And Valerie, of course, is Valerie Simpson. Did she take part in, is she still performing these days, or is she kind of retired from doing that?
No, she's still, well, as much as we can in these times. Yeah, she's still been performing. I think she
Yeah.
just really, no, I think she released a new record. Well, I think it was last, well, with the pandemic, you lose time, but I think it was the year before
Yeah.
last, or the end of the year before last. She just released a new record, so she's still writing, and she's been doing a bunch of collaboration. She just told me about a collaboration she did that was just released with Corinne Bailey Ray. So she's still doing her thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And of course, you did one writing collaboration with her on the record, song called "Strong Men Can." And so let's talk about how the two of you wrote this song together and what kind of relationship you guys have yourselves.
When was the last time you let something move you? Gave yourself the permission to choose to. Strong men can break down. Don't be afraid of the sound. Don't be afraid of the ground. Strong men can.
Oh, well, I've known Valerie for many years now. When I first moved to New York, one of the places they tell you to go when you first get here, especially as a singer who wants to, like put feelers out for work and gigs and all that kind of stuff, to go to the open mics. And, of course, she and Nick Ashford opened the Sugar Bar, which was
Yeah.
which was Nick's love child before he passed. And he just wanted to have a place where people can come and celebrate music. And so they had this big Thursday night open mic that still happens. And that's the one that just went virtual. So I remember, I guess it was 99, 2000, when I first started going there. I moved here in 98, but around 99, 2000 is when I found out about the Sugar Bar. I started going there. And Valerie was like, what are you doing with that voice? And I was like, I'm just trying to make it. We're just out here. And so she and Nick sort of took me under their wing. And even years ago, before Nick passed, he invited me over to the house. They were working on writing some original songs for this musical that was supposed to have gone to Broadway. And
Right.
something happened with the writers. It didn't happen, but they invited me over to sing some of the demos. And then Nick was just like, I had done a couple of my own original intimate nights, original music shows at the Sugar Bar. And they invited me over to like a writing session. So there's actually, I went over like 2 days in a row. And we had like this full 2 days of like writing. And when they invited me, he was like, I want to pick your brain. I love how you think of melodies and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, well, I definitely want to sit in y'all's presence because that's where all the money is. That's where all the magic and the money. It's all there. That was just like a great experience. And ever since then, they just sort of took me under their wing whenever something would happen in my career. I would call Valerie and and she would give me advice or tell me, what not I should, if something sounded fishy to her or whatever. Right. So they've just been big supporters. So when I started putting this record together, I actually went to her first to make sure that it would fit on me, because the goal of the record wasn't to do like a covers album, and it's not really a covers album. There are covers on the album, but it was to make sure that it represented me as much as it honored Marvin, and that was the goal of the record. So I had done the first demo, not the one that's on the record, but I had done another demo of "I Want You," and I went to take it to her, and me and my manager, we played it for her, and I was like, "Is there something here, or should I just stop barking up this tree?" And she was like, and she paused and she goes, there's something there. And I said, okay. So that was her blessing to go forth. And so as we started compiling all the songs and everything, I started going back through Marvin's catalog and like from as much stuff I could find, finding old obscure things, buying random, like, one of a kind things online and stuff like that. And just to make sure I covered the whole gamut of stuff that was special. Yep. And so I emailed her, I called her back. And I was like, hey, would you be interested in, I know you wrote most of Marvin and Tammy Terrell's early hits, like 99% of them, if not 100% of them. Yep. Would you be open to writing a new song with me for this project, since it is honoring Marvin? And she was like, let me think about it. And then a couple of days later, she sends me this voice memo of just her at the piano. And then she sent me a text. She's like, I usually don't just send people my voice memos. I usually go into my little studio and doctor it up a bit so you can, so they can really, expand on it. She's like, but I think you'll get it. Yeah. And it was her, and she was singing through that beautiful chorus that's there. And I immediately had a smile on my face, and I called her back, and I was like, yeah. She's like, well, let's get together, write some more verses, and do what we got to do. And so that's how that happened. So I went over to the house, and before I knew it, it was there. And it was very timely, actually, as it happened, because the song really speaks sort of like mental health issues that we have, especially here in this country. But I'm assuming all over the world by this point. But, people are always told to be a certain way, and, people are born different ways. People have certain quirks and certain things, and when people aren't able to fully express themselves and live their actual human experience, then they suppress. And suppression eventually will always boil up into something that's
we have the same issues here in New Zealand, so it's a big problem, actually. So it's universal, it seems like. So for folks who may be wondering, why did you, because I know you've kind of covered and performed Stevie Wonder's tunes and Michael Jackson's and a bunch of other folks. What is it about Marvin Gaye and your relationship with his music that caused you to make this album all about Marvin?
Well, I had taken quite a few years off from the recording industry, and I did dive into Broadway, which is when I did, Motown the musical. I actually played Stevie Wonder in the musical, but I understudied Marvin, so I actually went on for Marvin quite a bit. Yeah. And I was just talking to my manager, and I was like, well, I think it's time for me to go back into the industry. It's really hard these days to really like push original music without the big companies behind you and all of the money and all that. And so we was kind of just looking for something that made sense for me as an artist, that wouldn't feel like, because I didn't want to be like a covers artist, and I didn't want to do like a bunch of random covers like my first album was. They were obscure covers, so they felt new to everybody, but they were actually covers. But for me personally, I was like, I don't want to just do covers, and I don't want to do something that, I just want to do something that made sense. Yeah. And so we were researching, and she looked online. I guess there was an article in the paper that was saying this year was that year, well, it was a year ago now, but it was Marvin Gaye's 80th birthday. And I was like, oh, wow, Marvin. And then my mind just started flashing. I was like, wow, when I first moved to New York, the first song that I ever sang that got people's attention was What's Going On. And that was the one that sort of put me on the map here in New York as a singer. Yep. Flash forward to Motown the musical. I'm playing Stevie, but I'm understudying Marvin. So I'm going on, a couple of times a month, playing Marvin, diving into his story, really, talking more with Berry Gordy about how Marvin was, because we got to speak with him during the musical, and he was like an open book about his experience with everything, and it was great. And then my third Grammy nomination was for my cover of the Beatles' Yesterday, but my version is heavily based on Marvin Gaye's version, which a lot of people don't even know he did. It's sort of obscure, and I was like, well, Marvin's been all over my experience, so why don't I just it would make sense for me as an artist if I'm gonna do some covers of anything, to go with Marvin and just do one artist, just do Marvin, you know, because it makes sense. He's been all these pivotal points in my career, not even subconscious, because I was just doing, you know, what's going on, not thinking, oh, I'm gonna do a Marvin song. It's just, he just happened to be in those places. And I was like, well, this is coming full circle. So now I think I should do something to honor him. And when we were talking about it, I was like, in my mind, it was a covers album then. And I was like, but I wonder what he would be doing if he was still alive today. And that's when the wheels really started turning. And so we started, me and my manager had this long conversation, like, yeah, I'm like, cause, you know, when I spoke to BG, like, he wanted to be like a crooner and like travel with the Rat Pack at one point. He wanted to put out that, you know, his What's Going On album was very political, and Barry Gordy didn't want him to do that. He's like, you're a sex symbol, stay with pop, don't get political on people. And he was like, well, I won't record anything else. And he fought for what he believed in.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I wonder what he would be doing today. Would he have gone back to Motown after he left Columbia? Would he have started his own label? You know, how would he have changed his music? Because he wouldn't be singing the stuff the same way. Marvin's mind was always too forward. And so the lights came on. I was like, well, since we'll never have a definitive answer on that, then I can just attach what I absorbed from Marvin into my own artistry and just honor him, honor his presence, but actually be myself.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. Like you say, it's not a covers album, although, you know, you do Mercy, Mercy Me, and I heard it through the grapevine, and Sexual Healing and whatever. But you've mixed it up with your own songs, and I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that's done that, where they've kind of done a tribute album and added their own original tunes to try and get that same spirit. So did you give that much thought? Was it difficult to achieve?
No, because it just sort of happened organically. Like I feel like, you know, I feel like everything happens when it's time, and for me, like I don't not in an egotistical way, but I'm aware of the ability that God has given me and what I can do with it.
Right.
And so I feel that there is already greatness here in me at some point, you know what I mean, in a way that I can walk into a room and sing anything, whether original or not, and change the presence of the room.
Sure.
And Marvin had the same ability. So when you think, I'm like, you know, I'm not an icon in no way or fashion, but I'm like, there's greatness in me. So I can just attach what I do to what he has done and just do it. And so I started pulling through my songs. And Valerie was saying that to me too. She was like, because the night I got all the masters back, I called her. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I'm just taking a chance that you're awake. And I was like, I just got all my masters back. And I like, you know, I live in New York, so I don't need a car. So I rented a car because I like to listen to tracks in the car. So I rented a car and I was like, I'm driving down the West Side Highway now. Do you want to like listen to them with me through for the first time? And she was like, how soon could you get here? And I was like, maybe 15 minutes. She said, okay. And so I didn't know she was in the bed, but at the end she was like, that was worth putting on clothes for again. And so, but at the end she was like, she told me, she was like, this is probably one of the strongest bodies of work that she's heard maybe ever. And she was saying also because she's like, your writing is so strong that you can sing Sexual Healing and then you can put an original song sing after it, and they both hold up, and it holds up. And so I didn't feel a lot of pressure. I was just doing what felt right for me. And that was the thing. I wanted to make an album that I wanted to put on that I wanted to put on, that I had full control over of how it sounded and what it was. And this is like my first child, you know, that I'm putting out on my own. Before, you know, I had producers, Jimmy Braylauer, an amazing producer, but there was always, you know, we had a balance. There were certain things he was responsible for, and then there were certain things that I was responsible for. And I would never have to record anything I didn't want to record. But, you know, it was a full collaboration. And this time I was the label and I was the A&R, and so it was my first, it was frightening more in that way of like, you know, can I really put out something that is completely from my perspective, you know, and pull it off. And so I was very proud of the result. And so that was my main goal. And so I couldn't even start to take on the pressures of what it meant to like take on a Marvin catalog or any of that. It was just you're putting out something now just on you. So just make sure you like it. And so that became the goal. And that took a lot of the pressure off, actually. So
cool. And I guess one of the songs that's probably going to gather a lot of attention is Love and Pain, which, you know, you kind of co-recorded with Rob Thomas and Derek Trucks. And it's kind of a bluesy, kind of simmering bluesy thing. And then it kind of breaks into this gospel thing at the end, which I assume is kind of in the back of your mind, you're probably thinking, well, how does this fit in with Marvin and what he did?
The future is coming and it's ringing a bell. Searching for heaven, but going through There's a whole lot of love in pain.
Well, me and Marvin from the same school. I mean, his father was a pastor. I mean, I grew up in church, and so you know, a lot of that. Even like, you know, in his first the song from his first like big single, Hitchhike, was very call and response from that.
Yeah.
So all of that's call and response, and all that's a big part of like him. And so that was a bit old to it. I also feel like the subject matter, because Marvin would bring out some pretty deep things, even like inner city blues. He would talk about things that were very literal, but in a slightly poetic way, and it would just, you know, sort of pull us all together. But with Love and Pain, when we started, Love and Pain wasn't originally going to be on the record. It wasn't written for the record. It was just one of those serendipitous things that was so perfect that I felt I had to, because the record was done.
Right.
I had done a live concert at the Cutting Room here in New York City like a year and a half before, and just to make sure that it would work, that I could perform these songs, and that it would be just as much me as people would feel just as much me as they would feel Marvin. And so that was very important to me, that people know, oh, he's doing a Marvin Gaye cover song, because that's not what I want. I wanted, oh wow, this is great. Oh wait, that's Marvin. And that's the response I've been getting. So I feel so far I've been successful, you know, in doing that and what I set out to do. But it was just a crazy thing. When the pandemic first hit, I was renewing my contract with my publishers at Roundhill, and Rob Thomas, I didn't know at the time, was signing to Roundhill.
Right.
So they were setting up all these co-writers with me with all the new signings and people that I had written with before. And Rob Thomas was my second Zoom writing session since the pandemic and when everything shut down. And so we were writing the song, and he was like, so are you writing for your record, or what are you doing? And we would just talk. I said, are you writing for your record? Who are we writing for? We don't know. We were just on. You know, are we writing for sync? Are we writing for like a commercial? So we were just trying to figure out what we were doing. And then he was like, just forget it. Let's just write a great song. And so that's how it started. But by the end of it, you know, there are times like, you know, I recorded a lot of our sessions. So I have like audio of like Rob just singing like certain lines of the song. And when it was finished, I was like, my album's already done, but I do feel there's a certain Marvin-esque thing. There's a certain like elements of him that are here. Yeah. So now I think it's going to be 11 songs on the record. He was like, really? I was like, yeah. And then so when I was recording it, I was listening back to like some melodic lines that I was like, I want to suss these out. And so I was listening to Rob sing it at the writing session. And so I called him. I was like, I'm actually basing a lot of what I'm doing on, you know, the melodies that we create together. So why don't you just duet with me? Why don't you sing it with me? He was like, really? And he was like acting like he was honored. I was like, you're Rob Thomas. What are we talking about? I'm honored. And so he was like, I'm honored you asked me, because I usually don't. He always says stuff like this, but he's like, I usually don't sing duets with people who sing so much better than me.
Right.
I'm like, get out of here. I'm like, you're iconic. You know what you're doing. We're not going to go through that. But he appeases me, and you know, we're fans of each other's work, and so
cool.
And so he agreed to do it, and it was like such a great collaboration. And you know, I used to tour with Derek Trucks, and so we needed something really special for that little bridge part. And so I reached out to him, and we've been like, it was to the point where when we were touring together, like my band would ride his bus to the next city. So we were like one big family. And when they did their album that won all the Grammys, I never pronounced the word right, The Revelator. Right. They had me down to Jacksonville, and I like sang on like 10 of the tracks on the record and helped arrange backgrounds and just hung out. Cool. We had a great time. So we've been family forever. And he was like, anything you need, man, I got you. And so I was like, I'm gonna send you the track. Let me know what you think. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get all, who did he say? I'm gonna get all B.B. King on him or something like that. And he just sort of went, I sent it to him, and he did like 4 passes, and it was hard for me to choose what I want. He's like, I'm gonna send you a bunch of stuff, use what you think is best. And I was like, I just want to do a whole song of you just playing this song with no vocals, just a guitar version, because he's so awesome. So, but yeah, and so it just became a really cool collaboration between the three of us.
Now, I'm guessing that if you're just a casual Marvin Gaye fan and you look at the lineup of the covers that you've done, the one that might confuse some people is the final track, The Shadow of Your Smile, because it's something that he didn't really, I don't think he released it as his version in his lifetime. It was released post-hunger. Right. But Marvin always kind of, I guess, had, he identified with like Frank Sinatra and those kind of crooners at some point. So I assume that's why you put that there.
The shadow of your smile when you are gone.
Yeah, I mean, from being in Motown, the musical, and understudying him and having all these conversations with Berry Gordy, I couldn't do a album that honored him and not cover everything that he really felt was a part of him from his
Yeah,
lips, you know, because he wanted to be a crooner. He wanted to do like an American, like a American songbook, you know, album, which
yeah.
they released after his death, the album Vulnerable. And that was, I think, the last track on the Vulnerable album, and it's actually my favorite Marvin Gaye vocal performance ever. To the fact where I didn't even really, I sang the song exactly how he sang it. That's the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
song
yeah.
on the record that I literally was just like, there's nothing I can do better or different. I'm just gonna sing it and just try to emote how he emoted, and that would my honor to him would be to try to connect with that song as much as he connected. But I was like, I can't see myself doing any changes, adding any riffs or anything, no BS. That, you know, just sing it, because the way he did it was just so him that I didn't alter that one. The other ones, there's a piece of all the other songs are reimagined in some form. Grapevine is pretty straightforward, but then I added like a whole vamp that takes us to church that no one that, oh wow, that's from nowhere. And all the other
Yep.
songs, we added different grooves and we meshed it with different things and meshed it with my own artistry. And so everything is either reimagined, and from the original songs, it's imagining, because that was the point. We don't know what he would be doing today if he was still alive. Like,
Right.
would he have just gone and been a crooner and been touring, you know, like having Michael Bublé open for him, you know what I'm saying? Or would he have gone rock and Matchbox 20 be opening up for him? We don't know
Right.
what would have happened. And so it's
Yeah.
like all these crazy things. So it allowed me to expand on all my musicality, because as a songwriter, I'm not one of those songwriters just write in one genre. Like I've written pop, I've written country, I've written rock. And as a singer, you know, especially being a wedding singer and starting off in New York as a session singer, I had to
Yep.
be adaptable vocally as well. And with my voice, I can kind of do anything I want to do. And
Yep.
so for a long time, that was an issue for me, because they like, well, choose something because nobody knows what you are or who you are. And I'm like, well, why? I don't know. I understood why, but I was like, but I would feel pigeonholed. So some of the records, you know, we honed in on things, but this record actually gave me the freedom to actually cross a lot of borders that I normally wouldn't have been able to cross.
Are you concerned about being identified as a cover singer? And I mean, you've done Stevie Wonder and all these other guys that we talked about earlier. Do you worry that people don't know who the real you is from all that?
No, and we strategically sort of position that, one, because all of the covers could easily be like an original at this point,
Right.
because of how I changed them. And
Yeah.
secondly, I made sure that there was original music on this project.
Yeah.
So that my voice would be heard, and like the challenge, like what Valerie would say, like, it's really shocking that, you know, for these classic iconic songs to have original music that also shine as bright is a feat within itself.
Right.
And so I was very proud of that. So I don't, and we sort of strategically, I went back and forth with my manager. We had a couple of like, not arguments about it, but we had several conversations like, what you're doing a Marvin Gaye, you know, sort of tribute thing here, but these singles we're releasing are not Marvin tunes. I'm like, well, people will get Marvin. They know Marvin. I need to make sure people get me too. So the first two singles, which were Strong Men Can and Love and Pain, are not Marvin covers. They're actually original tunes. And they've been getting a lot of, you know, attraction and praise on their own. And now that the album is out, people are diving into the Marvin stuff, which I think is actually better in a way, because I feel like Marvin's been done so much and covered so much that if you started with that, although they are unique within themselves, it would still be like, we've heard it. But when you put out music that's original and as strong, and then when they get to dive into the full album, then people are, oh, wow, this is okay. Now I get it. And so, I hopefully, it just came out a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like it's working in that direction. So it's been cool.
So are you thinking about what you're going to do next?
Yeah, actually, because it's crazy. And I'm just sitting around in the pandemic. What else am I going to do? What is next? You know, I'm trying to figure out ways to try to perform this and figure out ways to get it, you know, to the masses, and, you know, figure out, you know, ways to circumvent, you know, parts of this industry that pigeonhole you. And so it's just a lot on my mind. But musically, yeah, I usually wait way too long between albums. And it was really crazy. Like the last write-up we got from Soul Tracks, which is really, you know, great website and a huge part of like the industry. Their review of my record was so amazing. Like my manager was like, "Did your grandmother write this?" And it was that great. It made me feel really, really, you know, validated by everything that I set out to do. They spelled it out without me having to say anything, and I felt it was really, really, really great. But yeah, so for me, it's like it is what is the next thing. And I have a couple of like ideas, and I'm working on some things, but I really want to fully exploit this one and push this project to the fullest. But yeah, my mind is always churning with what's next.
Cool.
And
hopefully you'll be able to perform some of these songs in front of an audience at some point.
Yeah, but the last line of their review, that's why I brought that up. The last line of their review said, "This is a highly recommended record from an artist that we don't hear enough of."
Right.
I always wait too long between, but like the first record was 2007, then it was 2012 I released the second one. And now here we are in what,
2020.
2020. And it's like, it's just been too long. So I'm going to try to get into a momentum of keeping things going. Actually, the one project I'm working on now, I've had it half of the album done for over 10 years. But actually a Christmas album I'm actually working on. And it's still kind of, but when the concept launches for what I've done, I think it'll be different too. So I'm going to hold off on talking about it, but it is a Christmas album. That's happening. That'll be out next year. Even if I put out another record, I'm still going to do the Christmas thing out. So
that'll make your manager happy if you have a plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. Well, hopefully you will be able to come down and visit us down here in New Zealand sometime. We'd love to hear you. So,
I would love to.
Like I said,
bucket list. Home away from home.
Hear your voice in person. So, good luck with the record. Thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed listening to it. I mean, I've been listening to Marvin's music for 50, 60 years myself. So,
no, I appreciate the support, man. It means a lot, definitely.
Very good. Well, have a good day. Thank you very much.
You too, and thank you.
Bye-bye.